Okay, hi guys. Happy Friday night. Hope everyone had a good kind of first week back to school or back to work in January. This is going to be a Brexit update, and by popular demand, the chart is back. I know it's not that clear when I do a live because, the picture isn't as crisp as when I set the camera up and whatever, but there's something more intimate and more personal about doing a live, and I know you guys kind of like that. So where are we with Brexit? Well, last time I was discussing it, I said to you that we would not leave on the 31st of October. There'd be a general election. Boris would win. He'd get a majority. And now do you notice that we're not even talking about the Brexit bill going through Parliament? We're talking about Iran. We're talking about Meghan and Harry. It's just sort of flying through. So the one problem here is that we are going to be signing this deal, which is essentially May's deal with a few tweaks, a few things taken out. Problem with the whole Brexit process is they did it back to front. We should have done the trade deal first and then done the other stuff. So now we kind of bound into certain things in this treaty, regardless of how good the trade deal is going to be. That's sort of unfortunate. What I think going through this year, I do think we're going to leave on the 31st of December 2020. Right, I think it will generally be wrapped up by then. But what sort of deal is it going to be? You'll know that in the main, as I've gone through my many Brexit predictions, I've always talked that we'd get a substantial Brexit, partially due to what I see in the chart there. It would be closer to a hard Brexit. I know that the EU, for example, Ursula von, whatever her name is, Juncker's replacement, when she was at Downing Street just this past week talking to Boris, she said that the time frame is far too short for them to be able to negotiate anything substantial. So there's no way a deal can be negotiated in that time. But look, we're starting from total regulatory alignment. So it's not like a deal with Canada where they've got to start discussing regulations. But Boris is also talking about a total potential diversion in alignment going forward, and the EU definitely aren't going to like that. So without me waffling on, let's have a look at what the chart says. So we still have solar arc very close to the UK's ascendant, which I'll come back to. We go over here in the 8th house. The UK has Mars in Taurus in the 8th house. Mars is in its fall in Taurus because Mars is kind of a co-ruler of Scorpio. So it's a weak position for Mars, and Mars rules the descendant. And that's probably why the UK has been involved in so many contentious relationships with other countries, where it's getting involved in wars, being quite I wouldn't say a confrontational nation, but when it comes to military strikes, we're always up there, aren't we? We're always getting involved, whether it's with America or prior to America being a power. We were kind of engaging in opium wars and colonialism and all that. So we can be quite an aggressive country. So for this Brexit period, solar arc ascendant has been conjunct Mars. Now, what's happening at the moment is transiting Uranus. It will be squaring Mars, moving up to 10 degrees of Taurus. It'll be conjuncting Mars, actually, in Taurus this year, throughout most of the year. Transiting Uranus is going to be impacting on Mars. And because Mars rules our descendant, Uranus is going to make our relationships with our former partners, the UK, the EU, very difficult. So I'm seeing this almost like a very contentious divorce, because if you were looking at that in someone's personal chart, it wouldn't be an indication of a nice, neat divorce where everyone negotiates. What it also says to me, because Uranus solar arc is also, it's a little bit far away, but it's moving to conjunct that position. It's always very strong when you've got a transiting planet and a solar arc planet doing the same thing. So because it's Uranus, it's about new. So I think we are definitely going to have new trade relationships with other countries. I heard that it might be possible, if we are getting to have a trade relationship with America, that maybe Trump can bring us into the USMCA for an agreement that will incorporate Canada and Mexico. And we might get spin-offs with the China deal that Trump is negotiating, which could be finalized going into next week. Although, as you know, I'm very skeptical about China's real motivations. I feel they want to be a global dominant force. So not quite sure how any trade deal with them could work to our advantage, could possibly not. So what I think by this is, when you look at the position of Uranus by transit, in 1936 and through the late 30s, it was in a very similar position during the time our relationship with Germany was deteriorating rapidly. I don't think we are going to be able to get much out the EU. From the EU's chart, they are belligerent and they will cut their nose to spite their face. They're quite a vindictive organization. And I think they care more about their political dream than they care about business, the economy, or the welfare of their citizens at the end of the day, they might prioritize punishing the UK over getting a good trade deal that is potentially beneficial for many millions of consumers and of producers in the EU. So I think they're going to be very difficult. I think it's going to be a tricky 12 months ahead. I think that Boris Johnson, looking towards the end of the year when we have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in the first degrees of Aquarius, that'll be squaring Jupiter here, which is in Leo in the 10th house. Now, when Uranus was squaring this position, when Uranus was early degrees of Taurus, squaring Jupiter in the 10th house, that was when Boris took over from Theresa, and it was happening again because it went retrograde. So it was happening again when Boris won the election, right? So Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, opposing, so it's Aquarius, it's over here, opposing that position, I think it's going to be kind of similar to when Uranus was squaring that position, which I think is going to be a victory for Boris. Although I'm wondering at the end of the year, if it's going to be no deal. I feel at the moment the resistance to no deal's gone away. It's at the back of people's minds. But all these new Tory MPs, we don't really know what their credentials are in terms of Brexit. Yes, sure, they're totally behind Boris's deal as it stands. But when it comes to the end of the year and it looks like there's going to be no deal, how are those new MPs going to react? Are we going to have a whole new contingent of MPs from all sides who are going to try and block a very hard no-deal Brexit in some way? Because, this situation's always evolving. We know there is a lot of money behind Remain, and I think Remain, as it was, has kind of gone out the window, but Remain is now morphed into create a soft Brexit. They are going to be using every legal, every lobbying, every media tool they can to prevent us going out really hard, which I think is inevitable. So I wonder at the end of the year, it's too late to have a referendum of any sorts. Like Boris couldn't say, let's have a referendum on sort of deal versus no deal, on say, for example, on an extension versus no deal. It's too late. A referendum takes at least 6 to 9 months to arrange. But I'm thinking that he is going to be in a slight corner at the end of the year because no deal is going to be on the cards. And he's either going to have the guts to just jump and say, we're doing this, which I think he will, rather than apply for any extensions. But within that, is there going to be some sort of vote or some mechanism where he can be assured that the public's on his side? Because I think they will be on his side, because I think people have had enough. So I still think we're on course for a particularly hard Brexit, because I see the EU being difficult. I don't see them playing ball, and I don't think it's going to be possible within this year period to get some sort of neat trade deal. It's definitely going to get messy again. They're going to try and delay. Bearing in mind now we have a whole raft of nations in the EU who are on a kind of Article 7 suspension. Now, this Article 7 suspension, which suspends voting rights, it was used against Poland because they wouldn't play ball with migration and other things. It was only supposed to be used against one country at a time. It's now being used against several. I think Croatia's in there as well, even Spain. I don't know. There's a whole raft of nations. So the EU is in a lot of trouble. And I think they will try and project outwards by being difficult with us to try and muddy the waters in terms of what's going on internally. Now, I'm just a bit concerned about Pluto on the first house. The first house is about borders. It's about the integrity of the country as a nation. I do feel we are at the biggest danger of splitting, but it's Ireland, Northern Ireland. This whole thing is going to kickstart a wave for Reunite Ireland. And I know that other people have been talking about that as well, and I see it from Pluto there. I think Boris has got a struggle on his hands now to hold it all together, and I don't see the threat as much Scotland as Northern Ireland. And what I'm going to be talking about when I look at my predictions based on Jupiter in Capricorn, which I feel have thrown up some quite interesting scenarios, so please look for that one. One of the features of Jupiter in Capricorn was always Irish terrorism. It was always a very big year for attacks on the mainland. So while I don't think Irish terrorism in terms of bombing the mainland necessarily will be the problem, I think the spirit of it in terms of Irish republicanism will be resurgent. And I think there'll be a huge, huge push for uniting Ireland. So UK, biggest danger of splitting. Do I think they can hang on? I think we can hang on, but it's going to be one of Boris's massive challenges to keep us together as a nation. And the whole focus is on Scotland. I think the big issue is Northern Ireland. And Theresa Guilfoyle, I know you've asked me many times to look at the chart of Ulster. I'm not ignoring you on that. It's just that sometimes I have to find an appropriate chart, one that I can connect with and feel that it's going to give me a good result before I do the reading. But I do promise I'll look at that. I'm just going to read some comments now. Hopefully the new Tory MPs from Brexit supporting areas in the North, Midlands and Wales reflect their voters' views. Mark, I totally agree, but they're untested. We actually have no idea how these MPs are going to react when push comes to shove, because they're always going to have the argument of, oh, well, it's going to hurt jobs. People didn't vote for a hard Brexit. That argument's always going to come up because you can't refute it. How can you really say what people are thinking or what they voted for? So these MPs are untested. Therefore, who knows? I mean, pressure could come to bear on them at the end of the year, and we could see lobbies forming of groups of cross-party MPs who are trying again to keep us on a soft Brexit. That's going to be the challenge for Boris. I think he'll prevail, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of the hardest Brexits. Jonathan, I don't think the new intake of Conservative MPs will back no deal if the government backs this, because if these new Conservative MPs vote against Brexit, they know they'll lose their seat. You don't think they'll back no deal? Yeah, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But look, how many? I think a lot of them will back no deal, but we don't know how many of them will. That's why I say I wonder if there's any mechanism or any scenario where Boris, in a short space of time at the end of the year, could go to people for a snap vote. You can't have a snap referendum, can we? But I'm just wondering under what scenario he could, in fact, have a kind of snap referendum just to clear the issue, because I think Boris is confident to go back to the public now. I think he knows he can win. So if he is being stonewalled in any way, or if any legal mechanism is used to stop no deal and force him to have some further extension, I think he might find a way of going to the people to get the authority straight from the people and bypass Parliament. Look, maybe he doesn't have to do that. Maybe the government is strong enough. But we're looking further down the line, and we can't dismiss what has been going on. We know they are not just going to give up. I think it's always a mistake to think that you've won and your enemy's gone to sleep. Didn't we do that when we won the referendum? I think Nigel kind of did that. After we won the referendum, he went off and he was focusing on Trump, whereas the Remainers were sharpening their knives and getting their toolkit out and getting ready. So I don't think we can be complacent in relation to this. Okay, let's have a look. I'm going to be doing a separate prediction on predictions for the UK for this year as separate from Brexit. Of course, I'll be mentioning Brexit, but I want to see how Boris is going to be doing on all of his other promises, like his free ports, enterprise zones, and all these things, and any other predictions that might be relevant for the UK. What I also want to talk about is Labour as dead and buried as we think they are? Because the talk is that Labour, especially if they elect Rebecca Long-Bailey, are going to be out in the wilderness or out of power for a long time. I think that's a little presumptuous. I don't think Labour are as far out of the frame as people think they are. I don't think the next election is a sure bet yet. I think it's a mistake to think that. Astrologically, I think it's a mistake to think that. So that's what I want to plan to talk about there. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to be looking in about 10 minutes or so, if my computer's playing ball. I'm going to be looking at the chart of Rebecca Long-Bailey to see, because it's quite interesting, and I've had a relook at the chart, and I'm really thinking that she is going to be the one, but I'm going to be looking at the other Labour leaders as well. I want to look at Jess Phillips and Lisa Nandy particularly. I don't really feel that Keir Starmer is going to do it, but hey, I better look at his chart as well. You never know. You'd think that Tory MPs representing seats that have never been Tory before would be hypersensitive. Well, they may be. The Tory members in the north, but what about your Tory people in the south, in other areas of the country? Could they maybe waver? You never know. You never know. It's all about spin, because they will project. I mean, when we voted for Brexit, we'd never thought about hard Brexit, soft Brexit. They invented that as a whole concept in order to confuse and muddy the waters. So, during this year, they're going to have a lot more time to invent more concepts to muddy the waters and to, in effect, say, well, the voters could have thought this, they could have thought that, therefore. And I'm sure there'll be more scare stories. I don't just think they're going to lie down. I'd be very surprised if they're going to lie down on this. But I do see that we will be making exciting new trade deals, and there'll be a lot of expansion. There's a lot of positive stuff going on. So I certainly think that this is going to free us up. There was talk before of would we be able to do trade deals? And I say, yes, we definitely will. It'll be with new countries. It'll be very forward-looking trade deals. It'll take us into the future on a great new trajectory. So I'm quite positive about that. Hi, Sanjit. Nice to see your name there as well. Happy New Year to all you guys, by the way. There was something I was going to say else about Brexit and the new directions for us. One thing I'm worried about in the UK chart, I'll just say now, is spending and financial crisis. Because we talk a lot about Brexit, and yes, there are opportunities, but globally, we're still facing this potential financial meltdown. We're not sure when it's coming. And I also plan to chat a little bit more about that. Thank you. Happy New Year. I hope it's going to be a good year. I think all us Brexiteers feel it's going to be quite a good year. But you know what? The Remainers have been strangely silent. I know they were very shocked by the election result. But I don't know. Silence always worries me. Doesn't it worry you? Where are they? While everyone's focusing on Meghan and Harry, on Trump in Iran, we're looking elsewhere. And I don't think they've gone away. They've got a lot of money to work with, haven't they? So... okay, thanks, guys. I'm going to end the stream because I'm going to start something different just now with Rebecca Long-Bailey's chart. Lobby, do away with customs duty. Let trade flow. Yeah, absolutely. But, I'm just wondering if there isn't a slight role for tariffs as a tactical ploy like Trump's done with China and with Chinese steel. I think there is still a role for strategic use of trade and tariffs. We shouldn't just consign those to history. I mean, they were initiated or implemented years ago for a reason. They should still be in the toolkit. Klaus, hi Lisa. You have a great channel. I struggle to see any charismatic and natural leaders within the Labour Party. Do you agree? People I talk to don't like any of the candidates. Oh, no, Klaus, I totally agree with you. I do think Rebecca Long-Bailey has a total lack of charisma. I'll talk about that when I do a chart. I mean, she's very straight down the line. I feel she's very one-dimensional. I don't think Keir Starmer is particularly likable. I feel he's another one of these kind of condescending Remainers who think he knows it all and who speak down to people. I think the problem with Labour is they've got the set of kind of champagne socialists who like to talk a socialist talk when they're living in relative luxury, and they've many people. I think it's the same Tory party. Got too few people who've ever had a real job. For example, or Rebecca Long-Bailey, she always refers to her time in the pawn shop, and then she worked briefly as a lawyer. Then she was in politics. I think these people are too young. I think politics is definitely an old person's game, and we should be taking the lead from America. Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, even Elizabeth Warren, Hillary, they all old. Sorry, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being 70. Respect to the elders, of course. But I do think politics, you need a lot of experience. And, when I was younger, I thought my grandfather was talking a lot of rubbish on many issues. I mean, the older I get, I realize he was right about everything. And I realize his perspectives, where they came from, why he saw the world as he did. You just respect that when you get a bit older. I think these people are too young. Like you say, I quite like Lisa Nandy. I mean, Jess Phillips, I think, well, like in Big Brother when they say she's a gobshite. Well, I mean, she comes across that way on Twitter. She's got a big mouth that I think can get her in trouble. I wouldn't say she's charismatic. I would say she's loud. She's confrontational. She's quite confident. She has a lot of strong views. But I also think she could be very divisive. And I do think she'll get herself in trouble. But as you say, Klaus, they don't particularly have a lot of charisma. But do you know that they were speaking on the radio a lot about how across all parties, when they choose candidates now, they go for people who are very bland because they're scared of the more way out characters. And what we need are more way out characters. Sure, Jess is one of those. Maybe she could be good. I quite liked her chart actually for this leadership because she's a Libra 9th of October. So she's got good synergies with the UK chart. And I do feel she's got a little bit better experience than the others. And she's kind of I say she's a street fighter, but politically, I feel she's got that street fighting instinct that she can really hold her own. I don't think she'll have to rely all the time on saying, "Oh, you can't say that to me, I'm a woman." But yeah, you're right. I think Boris is one of the few characters in politics, and that's why he works. I think to get away with making tough political decisions, you have to be a bit of a maverick. You have to be someone like a Trump or a Boris who's so off script, who's so out of the mold. They tend to get away with more. I think that's important. Yeah, these characters, Emily Thornberry, she's just another one of these condescending know-it-alls, so patronizing all the time. And the current lady who they think can be Lib Dems, Layla Moran, I've seen her put her foot in it in so many interviews. She just can't help herself be pejorative towards Brexiteers. I mean, she almost goes as far as saying they're stupid. I've seen her put her foot in her mouth in so many interviews where she just can't stop being condescending, and so therefore I don't think she's going to work. And keep all this pansexual thing out. People don't care about that. Come up with some policies. Will the economy be okay this year? I think it'll be okay, Culinator. But I'm going to be talking more about the economy because this whole thing about Saturn Pluto in Saturn Pluto. Yeah, so many conjunctions going on. I've got to make sure I named the right one. But the whole thing about Saturn Pluto is that I think in Capricorn, it's just making me edgy as far as the world economy. I might chat about that just now if I get time. Yes, Lobby Dosser, too many common purpose. Yeah, do you know, I wanted to talk about this because I had a guy on, I'm not going to reveal yet, but he wanted to come on as a guest on my channel to have a chat about this subject. When Nigel Farage was head of UKIP, his main, which he's attaché, or what would you call it? It was like his secretary, was a common purpose person. Why? That just got me thinking. What was a common purpose person doing? Being kind of Nigel's right-hand man at one point. I've got an article on that we can refer to, but it's kind of interesting. But yes, the problem is we need to drain the swamp. I think Dominic Cummings has a fantastic idea where he's talking about getting all these kind of misfits and mavericks in. I believe Uri Geller has applied, but I think he should stay well away because wasn't he going to stop Brexit psychically? Yeah, well, Uri, you failed. So, I don't think we need you on the team going forward. Thank you. You seem to have the wrong priorities. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. It's inspired by Dominic Cummings. You need these kind of eccentrics, misfits, weirdos. Yes, sure, bring them on board because these are people who have futuristic ideas. And that is exactly what we need because in politics, all of them have just become too bland. And too many of the Labour Party are being led by the nose, by AOC and the squad, and going on this whole green thing, which no one has voted for. I don't believe there's a massive appetite of people to be taxed to death because of the green apocalypse. So, I don't think that's that's really what people want. But as everyone has said, Labour just can't accept they got it wrong. They keep saying, but everyone loved our manifesto. I mean, the fact that they didn't vote for us is irrelevant. Believe me, they just loved our manifesto and our policies. Have you ever heard something so crazy? Oh gosh. Jonathan, your message has disappeared. I don't know if you changed it or something. So guys, yeah, I think I'll finish. I hope you enjoyed that chat about Brexit. I didn't have an enormous amount to say about it. Can I just summarize that Germany's going to be increasingly difficult? I think our relationship with the entire EU is going to deteriorate. And I think going forward, we will have a more confrontational relationship with them, not a cozy, easygoing one. I think it's going to be difficult from now on. And I think our closest allies will again be America and some brand new trading partners. Hopefully India, Australia, Southeast Asia, South Korea, hopefully some exciting new trading partners. Which will be great. Maybe Brazil as well, getting hooked up with the BRICS countries. I think they're exciting possibilities for us. But yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult. So I think the no deal is very much a possibility. I'm very concerned about the breakaway. Northern Ireland uniting with Ireland. Obviously, that would be a breakup of the UK, which not a lot of people like. Obviously, my Irish fans may think it's great. So, but judging by the UK chart, that is a threat, as is an uptake of Irish Republican feeling. I don't know if that's going to totally go towards terrorism or towards more political, psychological pressure or PR pressure rather than the terrorism that we saw in the past. Okay, thanks, guys. And yeah, happy Friday night. What's the time? Oh, nearly 11 o'clock. Okay, plenty of time for some more later.